I don't think that I will ever be as excited for an upcoming game release as I was going into the release of God of War Ragnarok. Having 5 years to speculate after the release of God of War 2018 and 5 years to truly get excited for the next one, I was very much not let down with what we got. It was a very hard task to follow up a game that I have said myself as was a game that defined the generation it released in, and I think that Ragnarok does a very amazing job of knowing those expectations and meeting them, if not surpassing them, in just about every way. So with that being said, guys, let's go ahead and hop into my review of God of War Ragnarok. Now, something I want to note before we really get into the actual review here, if you guys remember way back in my review of, I believe it was Resident Evil 2, I had mentioned that I lost my flash drive that had a couple of my videos worth of footage on it, and had to kind of take footage from the Radbrad as my way of being too lazy to fully replay a game for the sake of making the review. This was the unfortunate other casualty from that flash drive being lost. And yes, you would be correct if you mentioned that review that I mentioned that in is quite a few months old, and so is this footage. Unfortunately, it's just taken me a really long time to get around to actually making this. But with that out of the way, just wanted to clarify that is why it says footage from the Radbrad in the top, and that is also his footage, not mine. I wanted to make sure that that is clear. I do not want to claim this as my own, because it is not. That being said, my thoughts are my own, and let's go ahead and finally hop into those, shall we? 2 minutes into the video. As always with my game reviews, when I can, I'd like to start with the story. And the story to God of War Ragnarok is, as was expected, phenomenal. You are following up the 2018 game, which had one of the best stories in any video game that I have ever played, and you follow it up by having another one of the best stories in any video game I've ever played. We follow Atreus and Kratos, this time a few years in the future, as they've both grown a little bit, more so Atreus than Kratos as far as maturity levels go, and it's very cool to see both how far they've come and how far the world has come in this time. Throughout the game, you get to explore way more than you did in the first game, but you meet all sorts of other characters. Whereas the first game is desolate, and there's not really any gods you interact with, and the world feels kind of abandoned by them. This game, dealing with the aftermath and repercussions of the game before it, and the ending that comes with that, you of course are met with tons of that stuff. You get to see quite a few of the gods of this land. You get to interact with them quite a bit. You have Thor and Odin specifically are kind of like main cast members in this game. You get to spend a lot of time with them, but before the end of the game comes around, and you get to really understand who they are and their motivations. And you also, of course, as the first game is built on the dynamic of the father-son duo, so is this game. And you really get to see them kind of bond quite a bit by the end of the game. They have some struggles as the game goes on, as all parents and children do. And there's one moment specifically near the end of the game, which I won't spoil, obviously, but if you do know, then you'll probably pick up on the scene I'm talking about, where there's something very serious happens, and they really had been fighting for a good chunk of the game up until this point, and just they really come together, and Kratos is just really there for Boy, and it's such a very well done scene, and it really stood out to me. Also, since I'm on the topic of, kind of touching on spoilers, as was to be expected, the ending of this game is absolutely incredible, and while I obviously won't go into detail about it, it was everything and is everything that I hoped for, and if you haven't played it yet, it's everything you're hoping for, I'm sure. It is, I couldn't really think of a better way to wrap up the story that they started telling in God of War 2018. Speaking of God of War 2018, something that's really improved from the first game to this one, in my opinion, is the world itself and the exploration opportunities. In the first game, you're able to go to a couple of the 9 realms. Midgard is by far, though, the absolute biggest area you'll go to. along with, you go to Alfheim and Helheim, and I'm drawing a blank on another really big one right now, and I'm losing all YouTuber credibility in this exact moment. Anyways, the point is, you don't get to go to every realm, and even though some of the ones you do get to go to, they're unlockable and they come much later in the game. And in this game, you don't have that problem at all. As a matter of fact, there's a heavy emphasis on the fact that you can go to all 9 realms, at least at some point during the story. And especially with the size of them all, I feel like they're largely very balanced, but also they do somewhat lean in favor of the ones that you didn't get to go to in the first game. Both Svartalheim and Vanaheim are 2 of the realms that absolutely stood out in this game and are just very, very fun. Especially Vanaheim is just a very beautiful realm with a lot there. And honestly, Svartalheim, as time goes on, has really started to grow on me a little bit. Of course, you do get to return to the other realms from the first game, but they are all very different, and they are all not the same, just treading the same water that you did before, right? This time around, when you go to Alfheim, you're actually coming at the Temple of the Light Elves from the other direction, so you get to see a different part of the world completely, and it's very much not the same Alfheim that you were in before. Obviously, Midgar is very snowy now, and not just the world that you knew from before. And I really liked that because, exploration plays a big role in this game. And being able to go to these different areas, it didn't feel stale or bland or, again, like you're treading water, like, oh, I've done this before. Even the areas that you do return to feel different or done in a way where it's more of a, hey, cool, I'm here, than, oh, hey, I'm here, that sort of thing. And I really like that. And it's also a very good thing that the exploration is that good because there's a lot to do in this game. Outside of the campaign being roughly 25 hours or so, the actual length it took me to platinum this game was actually exactly 50. There is a lot of side content to do if that's the sort of thing that you're into trying to go for, and this is actually a game that I feel had a lot of side stuff to the point where I would argue that I got a little burnt out by the end. I mentioned in my review for Ghost of Tsushima that it's very rare that I can spend a long time collectible hunting in a game and not start to get bored, or, it's very rare that I find a game like that I still enjoy that by the end of it. And this was one of those games that, unfortunately, as much as I do love, I feel like I would not particularly enjoy if I had to go through it again if I wanted to platinum it again, if you get what I'm trying to say there. Not that obviously impacts my enjoyment of the game overall. It's just something to note about the side content, is there is borderline too much, which I guess is a good problem to have if you really want to think about it. Anyways, going into the gameplay now, the gameplay is very similar to God of War 2018, which is absolutely not a bad thing for the record. I very much love the gameplay in both of those games, and it's one of the funnest games that I can remember playing in a long time. I won't spoil anything. There is some good variety to the gameplay in this game in comparison to 2018's God of War. There's reasons for that, which would be the spoilers, but it's just overall a very good experience. If it isn't broke, don't fix it, and they did still touch it up enough that it's different enough that it stands out and is enjoyable. You have a bit more of an emphasis on the shield if you want there to be, and the relic attacks are obviously back. There's a good, like I said, it's just a good expansion on what you had before. There was no need to really completely reintroduce the wheel here, and they didn't exactly try to. So outside of all that, I did also want to touch on the music. It's something that I've started to do a bit more in my game reviews because there's some games that have some just really good music, and this is one of them. Whether that's the music or the sound effects, they're actually both really good in this game. It's very easy to get immersed and feel like you're in this world thanks to the sound quality, but the stuff that plays, whether it's you're punching somebody and you can feel their bones break against your fist, or you're just walking in the snow and you can really feel the pressing of the boot in the snow. The sound really elevates all of this, and it's very much something that really stood out with this game. But again, the music itself, when it is there in the cutscenes, when there is a emotional moment, or at the ending, or any of the above, it really truly stands out and elevates the experience as well. I know at the ending of this game, it was the music specifically that caught me and got me a little choked up, kind of realizing that the journey was over, and just the way that the music comes in, and oh man, that's an experience right there for sure. Like, I will say, like I mentioned, I do try to always find at least like one negative to touch on with my game reviews, and if there is a negative with this game, it's that there is too much to do, which is obviously not a bad thing. There is some pacing issues with the story, I suppose. There's one section a bit earlier on that feels very dragged out and slow out of nowhere, and really, while it's necessary to establish the things it establishes, feels like it drags on for too long. Largely, I feel like that's not necessarily an issue, but it is something that I figure I should touch on, since I do try to at least, find something to criticize with games, so that it doesn't sound like I think every game is perfect. That being said, I do think this game is very, very close to it. And with that being said, it should... What do you want? It should come as no surprise that I am giving God of War Ragnarok a 10 out of 10, just like the one that came before it. With that being said, guys, if you've played God of War Ragnarok, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the game in the comments down below. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to like, and if you're new here, why not go ahead and subscribe? I post videos like this, I wouldn't say all the time, but I'm trying to be better about it. With that being said, guys, thank you as always for your support on today's video, whether that is just watching it or not. I appreciate you, and as always, I hope to see you guys back in the next video. Bye, everybody.